Here.
Thank you. Director Barrows?
Here.
Director Decker?
Here.
Director Sproul?
Here.
Here.
And I am also present. So all the board directors are present. We're going to start with citizen comments. Citizen comments is the time in our meeting. Is that from Kyle's phone? Oh, thank you, Kyle. Citizen comments is the time in our meeting where the board and administrative staff like to hear comments from the public. If you wish to address the board live during one of our remote meetings, you should email vpsboard.directors@vansd.org by noon the day of the meeting so that our staff can add your name to the list of speakers and provide additional instructions. Because most matters require fact-finding and review, the board is not able to respond to any public comments made at this time. Additionally, the state's Open Public Meetings Act restricts deliberation of topics that have not been placed on the publicly noticed agenda in advance. If follow-up action is necessary, the board will ask the superintendent to work with administrative staff to consider the information and respond accordingly. Speakers are asked to be respectful with their remarks. Personnel complaints and personal attacks are not permitted. The board asks that personnel complaints be submitted in writing. When it is your turn to speak, please state your name and address for the record. You will have 3 minutes to make your comments. If you hear a chime, please conclude your remarks. If you have any additional materials you would like the board to review, please email them to vpsboard.directors@vansd.org. The board appreciates, listens, and cares about the broad range of perspectives in our community, and we thank you for your comments. All right, we have 3 speakers that have signed up, starting with Emily Anderson.
Am I able to put my webcam on or no?
Sorry, hold on.
Can you guys see me or no?
We cannot see you, no.
Okay, well.
You can turn on your webcam, yes, of course.
I don't know, it doesn't give me an option to.
Okay.
I'm moving your resumes.
We can hear you though, Emily, if you'd like to go ahead and give your remarks.
She's being moved as a panelist position so she can use her video.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Okay, sorry, I just got kicked out and then I'm in now.
And now we can see you.
Okay.
Thank you for your patience,
Okay,
Emily.
awesome. Can you hear me? Yeah, of course. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, yes.
My internet connection is unstable. Okay, awesome. My name is Emily Anderson. My address is 301 Northwest 152nd Street, Vancouver, Washington, 98685. As a rising junior at Skyview High School, I am poised to undertake my most academically rigorous and important classes this school year. I need to see my teachers face to face. I speak for myself and the overwhelming majority of my peers when I say that distance learning this spring was absolutely not sustainable. Separate and apart from the obvious benefits of academic rigor and accountability, we miss the daily social interaction, the classroom environment, fun activities with our teachers, sports and clubs, and everything else in between. I have sat and listened to elected officials, adults, pediatricians, and teachers alike as they try to tell each other what seems best for the students. Nobody in authority seems to consult the very people this system is supposedly designed to benefit. When will the students in the school district become the priority? I'm incredibly frustrated with our elected officials for dramatically shortchanging the students with baseless claims and weak facts. In Washington state, only 13% of the state's total coronavirus cases are aged 0 to 19. That age group has had 0 deaths. Let me also mention that globally, there is no substantial evidence to prove a case of coronavirus passed from student to teacher, and vice versa. In Europe, multiple schools have reopened with no outbreaks whatsoever. In Sweden, researchers found that staff members were no more likely than people working in other professions to contract the virus, according to the Washington Post. Camille Stoltenberg, Director General of the Norwegian Institute of Public Health, says, "The scientific evidence for the effects of closing schools is weak and disputed." Furthermore, she adds, We see now that after having open schools, we haven't had any outbreaks. Students need to get back to school in the fall. We will fall tremendously behind if we do not. Per the Washington Post, Belgium's school reopening was accelerated by an open letter from hundreds of pediatricians arguing that the educational cost of keeping schools closed was worse than the health risk of reopening. Teachers are essential workers, just like the postal workers, grocery store cashiers, doctors, police officers, and pharmacists. These same teachers who have been so vocal about how dangerous the return to the physical classroom will be are the same teachers I have seen this summer socializing without masks in the community in which I live. Our very own Vancouver Public Schools Superintendent, Dr. Steve Webb, is quoted in a June 14th article in the Columbian stating, and I quote, "I believe it is time to get our students back to schools, our families back to work, and our businesses back to operation." He goes on to say that we can do all three this fall in a sensible manner. To the elected officials and all the adults alike, listen to the children. We rely so heavily on you to make the right decisions in order to benefit us and ultimately our futures. For our district board members, it is time you put politics and special interests aside and put the students first for once. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. All right, our second speaker is Kara Bailey.
Hi. Are you able to do a visual also?
Yeah, I believe so. We can move her to the panelist, can't we, Steve?
Yes, we can.
Okay. There, it looks like. All right. All right. There we can see you. Hello, Kara.
Hi. I apologize about my background. I am in not my space. I was not aware of a few things in regards to addressing the board, so I'm going to change it up a little bit and do as best as I can to keep the person anonymous, but that is why I'm here to address the board, is a position that was filled. And so I will send an email with my concerns more directly to follow up. So I am addressing the board about this article from the Columbian. This is in regards to the 4 positions that have been hired on. The position filling for the special education compliance manager is my #1 concern. During my son's time with Vancouver Public Schools, this person that got the position did not comply with the law for special education, specifically isolation and restraints. Not one of these are hundreds of isolation and restraints.
Kara,
Yes.
I'm going to interrupt you just for a second. I'm sorry, you can't make, because this would be, if you're identifying a specific person, it would be a personnel complaint. And we would ask that you submit that. I'm sorry. You can share more general concerns or maybe, I don't want to try to lead you, but keep it, please, a little bit more general and less specific if you can.
I had to file a police report for everybody involved at this school. So it's not just this person, but he was in charge. So I will move on. If the district wants to make real substantial changes, hiring internally is not a good way to do it. I spoke to the state, they agree. It does not show that you want to make true changes. Additionally, hiring an assistant general counsel does not show that you are making changes. It shows that you are wanting to hide and not make changes. That is my concern. The other portion is the lack of reaching out to the disability community for the diversity and equity of inclusive initiatives. Most of the communication from the district has left out disability. They have, it's not there. And I would like to know why. That is one of the general, the office of the report that came from, sorry, my speech is gone. The Attorney General's investigation, what included disability, and I don't see that being reported. And I would really like that to be included with the the policies, and Vancouver Public Schools. So that's all I have, and I will send an email addressing my true concerns with what I wanted to talk about today.
Thank you, Kara. I apologize for the confusion there. I appreciate your flexibility. Thank you.
Thanks.
Our third speaker is Carrie Van Nostrand. All right, hello, Carrie, we can see you. If you can turn on your mic, we'll be able to hear you as well. Thank you.
Thank you for your patience. My name is Carrie Van Nostrand. My address is 2907 East 24th Street, Vancouver, 98661. I'm an educator and leader within the Vancouver Education Association. I first want to express gratitude to VPS School Board, one for incorporating public comments such as this, but also for hosting our study session last week. Your attempt in bolstering community and staff communications, providing a higher degree of transparency, and responding to constituent inquiries, both from families, community members, and staff, is greatly appreciated. And the questions posed during the study session were strong evidence for not only the expertise that folks bring to their positions on the board, but also evidence that clear listening is taking place to those inquiries that come from community members and staff members alike, showing that you're willing to do your homework as well. And again, as an educator, I think I can appreciate that all the more so, your homework. The gratitude I also want to express is to VPS leadership for the great work that they put into this reentry planning process, and their willingness to power through a long meeting as well. There was some opportunity for direct staff input, and I hope there will be ongoing opportunity both from families and from staff more directly as we continue to pivot and refine this process going into an unpredictable school year. But especially at this stage when VEA and VPS have an opportunity to come together around the mountain of the task we see before us with reentry under COVID circumstances, I share concerns that both VEA members and community members have shared with me around kind of feeling blindsided, honestly, by the risk management letter that Dr. Webb and fellow superintendents signed on to, making claims or requests for waivers of liability. I think we all recognize concerns for health and safety of all parts and pieces of our system, the staff and students and the families that host them. And I want to be clear that the concern around waiving this liability for building-based impacts that are related to COVID are obviously disconcerting for staff, but disconcerting for families as well. And if there are still substantial concerns around health and safety, then as we're considering the option for reopening remotely for students, then perhaps the proposed on-site requirement for staff is something that we might reconsider at this time as well. And thank you very much for the opportunity to share.
Thank you, Carrie. All right, so that is all of our speakers for tonight. We're going to move then to consent agenda. And I will need a motion to accept the consent agenda.
I motion to accept.
Thank
Sorry.
you. Thank
And
you, Kathy.
I will second that.
Thank you, Tracy. Are there any questions or discussion for consent agenda? Okay, so we'll go ahead and move to the vote. Director Banfield,
Agree.
Director Barrows,
Yes.
Director Decker,
Approve.
Director Sproul,
Approved.
and I will also vote yes, so the consent agenda passes. We're going to move to our first business of regular business, first item of regular business. And that is a recommendation to approve guaranteed maximum price amendment to our agreement with Robertson and Olson for the construction of VITA. Superintendent Webb, do you have additional information?
I do, but before we take that on, we've got some minutes that were also.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, quite all right. If we
Oh, I
could
see.
back on those as well? That would be
Yes, I
good.
see that. I apologize. So let's go ahead and do that. We do have approval of minutes. I skipped right past it for March 10th and March 24th. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
I'll motion.
Thank you, Tracy. And a second?
Second.
Thank you, Kathy. Any discussion about the minutes? All right, hearing none, we'll go ahead and go to the vote. Director Banfield,
Approve.
Director Barrows,
Approve.
Director Decker,
Approve.
Director Sprawl,
Approve.
and despite my missing it, I will also approve it. So the minutes are approved. Thank you, Dr. Webb, for catching that. All right, let's go ahead and move to our first item of regular business then, which is the recommendation to approve a guaranteed maximum price amendment to our agreement with Robertson and Olson for the construction of VITA.
On October 9th, 2018, the district approved an agreement with Robertson and Olson Construction, Inc. for general contractor construction manager services. Under the terms of the agreement, the contractor will provide a guaranteed maximum price for the construction of VITA Elementary School. The 4-story facility is designed to accommodate 410 students at full build-out. Based on a previous recommendation, the scope of the work in the GMP is to construct the school to accommodate 300 students initially. The 4th floor, accommodating an additional 110 students, will only include the exterior shell at this time. That floor may be finished at a later time as budget resources are available. The fund source is the Capital Projects Fund. It's a recommendation that the Board of Directors approves a guaranteed maximum price amendment to the agreement between the district and Robertson and Olson Construction for the construction of VITA Elementary School in the amount of $32,209,167 plus Washington State sales tax, and authorize the superintendent to execute the agreement document.
All right, so can I have a motion to approve this recommendation?
I'll motion.
Thank you, Kathy. And a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Tracy. All right, any discussion or questions? All right, then we'll move to the vote. Director Banfield?
Approve.
Thank you. Director Barrows?
Approve.
Director Decker?
Approve.
Director Sprawl?
Approve.
And I will also vote yes, so the motion passes. Our next item is, sorry, my window just closed on me. There we go. Recommendation to conduct a first reading to adopt new policy 3225, school-based threat assessment.
During the 2019 legislative session, the legislature mandated that by the beginning of the 2020-21 school year, every school district in Washington establish a school board threat assessment program. Over 10 years ago, Vancouver Public Schools, in collaboration with ESD 112, established its threat assessment program. The new law requires that the district memorialize its threat assessment program in a board policy and administrative procedure that is consistent with a model policy developed by the Washington State School Directors Association and the Office of the Superintendent of Public Instruction. We'll waive the reading, and unless there are questions or comments, we'll bring this back to the board for action on September 8th.
Okay, are there any questions or comments? All right, then we'll move to the next item, which is a recommendation to conduct a first reading to adopt new policy 3424.
A new law requires school districts with 2,000 students or more to obtain and maintain at least one set of opiate overdose reversal medication doses in each of its high schools. Beginning with the 2020-21 school year, each high school may obtain and maintain opiate overdose reversal medication through a standing order prescribed and dispensed in accordance with the law for the purpose of assisting a person at risk of experiencing an opiate-related overdose. Also beginning with the 2020-21 school year, school districts must adopt an opiate Related Overdose Board policy. Key components of the policy include provisions that, after a good faith effort, if the district is unable to obtain the opiate overdose medication, it is exempt from the law. Designation of personnel authorized to administer the reversal medication, and employee training requirements. A new policy and procedure proposed to comply with the mandatory opiate-related overdose guidelines for the 2021 school year. And again, we'll waive the reading, and unless there are questions or comments, we'll bring this back to you for board action on September 8th.
All right, questions or comments? All right, then we'll move on to the next item. Recommendation to conduct a first reading to adopt revised policy 3510, associated student bodies.
RCW 28A325050 requires districts to post the following ASB program information on the district website. First, the fund balance at the beginning of the school year. Second, summary data about expenditures and revenues occurring over the course of the school year. And finally, the fund balance at the end of the school year. The district must maintain that information on its website for 5 years. Additionally, this RCW provides that a school district board of directors may establish and collect a fee from students for attendance at any optional extracurricular event, provided that in setting the fees, the district adopts a policy for waiving and reducing such fees for students who may have difficulty paying for the entire amount of such fees. OSPI requires confirmation of the district's compliance with posting information on school websites. By December 30th, 2020, OSPI will publish a list of districts that are out of compliance with the law regarding fees for optional non-credit extracurricular events. The district's policy and procedures are revised to include the reporting requirements and a summary of the provision for the waiver of fees. And again, we'll waive the reading. Unless there are questions or comments, we'll bring this back to you for board action on September 8th.
All right, questions or comments? Okay, then we'll move to the next item. Recommendation to approve purchase agreement number 2020-063 for carpet at Walnut Grove.
The Vancouver School District will be purchasing and installing new carpet for the new Walnut Grove Elementary School in accordance with the 2017 bond program. Fund source is the Capital Projects Fund. It's a recommendation that the Board of Directors approve a purchase agreement with Beresford Company through a KCDA cooperative bid for the purchase, delivery, and installation of carpet at Walnut Grove Elementary School in the amount of $224,260.57 plus Washington State sales tax, and authorize the superintendent to execute the purchase agreement.
All right, do I have a motion to approve purchase agreement 2020-063?
I'll motion to approve.
Thank you, Kathy.
Yeah.
And a second?
I'll second. This is Kyle.
Thank you, Kyle. Are there any questions or comments? All right, then we'll go ahead and vote. Director Banfield,
I approve.
Director Decker,
I approve. You skipped
Director
Tracy.
I did it out of order. Director Barrows.
Approve.
Sorry, Tracy. Director Sproul.
Approve.
And I also vote yes, so the motion passes. All right, next is a recommendation to approve purchasing agreement 2020-061 for Fir Grove Furniture.
To meet the needs of the Vancouver School District capital programs and construction at Fir Grove Elementary, the district will purchase furniture to provide the school and students with the products needed for their education and enrichment throughout their time at that facility. The fund source is the Capital Projects Fund. It's the recommendation that the Board of Directors award a purchase agreement to meet district capital program and construction needs at Fir Grove Elementary School in the not to exceed amount of $396,320 plus Washington State sales tax to Portland, Oregon to provide furniture needs, and further authorize staff to amend project requirements to meet district needs as required.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve?
This is Kamara. I'll move to approve.
Thank you, Kamara. And a second?
I'll second. This is Kyle.
Thank you, Kyle. Any questions or comments? All right, then we'll go ahead and vote. Director Banfield,
Approve.
Director Barrows,
Approve.
Director Decker,
Approve.
Director Sproul,
Approve.
and I will also vote yes, so the motion passes. All right, our next item is recommendation to approve resolution number 863, Vancouver School District's reopening plan for the 2020-21 school year.
The state superintendent of public instruction is authorized to make rules and regulations as necessary to carry out the proper administration of its statutory duties in unforeseen conditions. On June 11th, 2020, the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction issued official guidance for reopening Washington schools for the 2021 school year, which included sections on health and safety from the Department of Health and the Department of Labor and Industries. The guidance specified employee and student safety requirements for reopening schools during the COVID-19 pandemic and requires school boards to adopt and submit reopening plans for the 2021 school year. School districts are required to use the reopening plan template provided by OSPI. School districts' board of directors are required to adopt the reopening plan. Now, the district must provide the reopening plan to OSPI and the State Board of Education no later than 2 weeks before the district's first day of school, which is September 1st, 2020. As the board is aware, on August 4th, the board examined the district's reentry guidelines, the Distance Learning 2.0 plan, and remote learning start recommendation consistent with the Washington Department of Health reopening schools guidance. Of course, we will continue to provide an update on Distance Learning 2.0 at the board's 8/18 workshop and certainly on the 8/25 board retreat. It's a recommendation that the board of directors approve resolution number 863 for Vancouver School District number 37, the reopening plan for the 2020-21 school year.
All right, do I have a motion to accept or approve?
I'll move. This is Kyle.
Thank you, Kyle. Do I have a second?
I will
This is
second. Oh, sorry, Kamara.
I'm going to give it to you, Kamara. Thank you. And this would be the opportunity for questions and discussion. And I just want to actually take this opportunity to express my gratitude one more time to the staff for last week's work session where we reviewed this issue in some depth. 5.5 hours, it was a marathon session, and I cannot thank you all enough for sticking with us for that long. It is absolutely clear that everyone involved in this decision and the subsequent planning is committed, deeply committed to the work, and that it has been a very carefully considered decision on the part of the board and the staff. For those in our community who were not able to watch last week's meeting, the video recording has been posted to our website. If you have 5.5 hours to kill, it might be worth your time. It was a thoughtful and engaging discussion. And despite its length, I for one felt it was time well spent in truly digging deep into the plans that are being created for remote learning and reopening and address many of the concerns that have been raised by members of the community. I also want to take this opportunity to identify the priorities and themes that came out of last Tuesday's discussion, and encourage the staff to keep them in mind as they continue to work on the plans for remote learning and reopening, although I am confident they have been considered and will continue to do so. First is the importance of streamlining the delivery of lessons as well as narrowing the scope of curriculum. We have heard again and again from families about challenges related to technology, the number of different apps being used, etc. We need our families to feel confident and prepared to help their children with remote learning, and reducing the number of apps they need to learn, narrowing the scope of curriculum, focusing on high priority standards will help students and families be more successful. Secondly, and related to that, is the need for clear and regular communication with families, especially during remote learning. We need to provide parents and caregivers clear expectations with regards to their role in supporting students learning remotely. Our plans need to be easy to understand and easy for families to implement. We also need to allow for flexibility and a lot of grace and understand that each family has a unique set of circumstances that they are working with, and having to figure out how to fit at-home learning into those circumstances is going to be a real challenge for many. Thirdly, we need to be mindful that in addition to the extra workload for families at home, remote teaching is much, much harder and requires greater effort from teachers and principals than the traditional teaching that happens in the classroom. Much of the challenges of remote teaching will fall upon the shoulders of our teachers and building administration, and I would encourage us to do whatever we can to take things off their plates during this time. Anything that can wait should wait. Our educators who work directly with students and families will need more support, more time, and more flexibility than ever before. Fourth, we need to stay focused on meeting the needs of our special education, ELL, and at-risk students. So many of our students rely on support services available to them in the building, and we need to commit ourselves to providing those students in-person supports as soon as it is safe to do so. Finally, we need to identify and clearly communicate the metrics we'll be using to determine when it is safe to move from one phase of learning to another. Families should not feel as if they are guessing about what happens next and when. Rather, we want them to feel confident and comfortable with the plan that we've created and how it is being implemented. After our meeting last week, I have no doubt that these priorities are shared by board directors and staff alike, and the plans that we are creating are being done so with appropriate considerations. But I also want to encourage my fellow board directors to add or elaborate and share their own thoughts at this time as well before we move to a vote.
I will go.
Sure.
So I want to just piggyback on a couple of things that Wendy said, but I won't promise I won't take too long. This one kind of melds the communication piece with the communication piece about what we clearly expect from parents, and the communication piece about what the plans are for when do we go hybrid, when do we go. I was speaking to somebody today, and I said it would be really nice, as from a parent's point of view, if I had something like a refrigerator paper that I could put on. One side was, this is what my kids' schedule will look like when we're in remote, and then flip it over, this is what my kids' schedule will look like when we're in hybrid. And I would like to have that before we have to switch to hybrid. That way it can be as soon as we designate it's time to go to hybrid, all the parents have to do is flip over their, this is just an idea, flip it over and know, okay, starting on Monday, this is where my kid will be, and this is what my kid will be doing. And I think that's totally doable. And then with the clear expectations of when do we make those decisions? What does the count need to be? For how long does the count need to be? And I think that will help a great deal in relieving anxiety from the families and also the staff. Thank you.
I also wanted to add something, Wendy.
Sure.
So first, thank you, Wendy, for your comments. I appreciate and agree with all the points you raised. I also wanted to emphasize the importance of steady, open communication over the next 4 weeks. Parents, as they are figuring out how to plan their childcare and how to support their students from home, but also for educators and support staff who are trying to plan how they will navigate the school year, truly doing their job in a whole new way. We all need frequent and detailed communication. I know that the planning, everybody at the district office is working so entirely hard and long days, a lot of energy is going into it, but I just really wanted to emphasize frequent communication about the plans as things develop, so people can start understanding what their days are going to look like, what their expectations for the school year will, how they can expect the school year to play out. I know that these are some unprecedented challenges, and I just want to issue my gratitude for everyone at the district office who's working tirelessly. Last week's session was extremely beneficial for me to understand a little bit more about our reopening, and I know it's a work in progress. So I just wanted to also say thank you.
I'll share some of my thoughts. I think this is a hard decision. This is not anything that I think this time last year any of us prepared for. And I think I know as an educator, and I know all of us know that, you know, students learn best in the classroom, teachers teach best in the classroom. And being in person is obviously, I think, what we all want. But we are in a situation where we weren't expecting. And I think there are a lot of resources our schools offer that, given distance learning, makes it really challenging. My obvious concern is for special education students, at-risk students, mental health support, social emotional learning. And I want to make sure that if we move forward into distance learning, that those are priorities. I know several of my board directors have also emphasized that as well, but distance learning provides challenges to a lot of students and is not ideal for a lot of students, but I think we are in an interesting situation in our district because other schools around the country have started and we start later, and I think we are seeing some of the things that are happening across the country. I think that, you know, like I mentioned, this is not an ideal situation to have to make these hard decisions. But I want to make sure that some of our at-risk students and some of our neediest students, that we are still making those needs a priority if we move forward with not being able to have school in person.
Okay, this is Kamara, and I don't have much to say because, for one, I'm fairly new at this, but I did want to say that through this process, I just wanted to commend our community through this process. I can't believe how involved all of our community members are, and the parents. We've received so much communication from people who cared so deeply about their kids and their community, just as we all care about our children. So I just, I want to say thank you to the community. That was a very long meeting and I was running around trying to find a signal the whole time, trying to recharge one phone as the other went dead. But I just want to say it was worth it to see how important, how much our community is putting this in front of them, and knowing that there's not an easy decision. So I think we all know that, we all heard it, but there's a lot of passion towards making sure our kids are educated well. So I appreciate that.
All right, thank you, everybody. All right, before we move to the vote, I just want to make sure, are there any questions that anyone would like to ask? All right, then we'll go ahead and vote. Director Banfield?
Approve, sorry.
Thank you. Director Barrows?
Approve.
Director Decker?
Approve.
Director Sproul?
Approve.
And I will also vote yes, so the motion passes. All right, at this time, we are going to recess for the purpose of a public hearing for the adoption of Resolution 862, providing for the 2020-2021 budget. And I believe we have a staff presentation. Superintendent Webb?
Yes, we do. We've briefed the board on budget development throughout the spring, and most recently at the August 4th study session. I'm going to turn this over to Brett Blechschmidt, CFO, to present the recommendation and walk through the 2021 budget. So Brett, you're up.
All right, thank you, Dr. Webb and President Smith. I'm going to attempt to share screen here so we can view the slides that I have prepared to summarize the budget. Is everybody able to see the slides? All right, excellent. So there's sometimes a lag here, so I'm going to let it get caught up. There we go. Much of our deliberation and conversation leading up to this date has been focused on the general fund, but this is kind of our annual opportunity to recognize that the budget that we're asking you to approve includes other funds as well. The reason we don't deliberate them as much is they're very narrowly focused and statutorily set as to how they work. For instance, the Associated Student Body, the students themselves build their budgets at each school. Debt service fund is strictly the taxes we collect to pay for voted bonds and debt. And all we're allowed to spend those dollars on, obviously, is the payments associated with that voted obligations. And Capital Projects Fund, I think, speaks for itself. That's where all of our construction activity, which is funded by the bonds that our voters have generously supported over the years. And then Transportation Vehicle Fund is where we buy buses. And really the only revenue stream there is the state depreciation funding, which is used for those bus purchases. The only other thing I'd call your attention to on this is, I guess third from the bottom line is our excess revenues are under, I would just point out that the 417,000 of deficit spending in the general fund is almost entirely intentional. Those are spend downs of specific reserves that we've set up for very specific purposes. And as those activities occur, we consciously draw down those specific reserves. So when you remove those from the equation, it's basically a break-even budget. Moving on to the next slide, we just annually like to kind of take stock of the scope of the general fund as it relates to the other funds. You can see that still the largest fund that we appropriate money for and consumes the largest amount of financial activity is still our general fund. As our capital projects fund is ramped up over the last couple of years, it's drawn down that percentage of general fund activity as a percentage of the whole. But still, general fund does dominate the picture. As we move on to the expenditure side, same analysis I would offer. The other thing I would point out is the combined activity and the responsibility of staff and you all as our governance structure. We're a little over $500 million of expenditure authority when you factor in all of the funds. That's kind of going through our desk collectively. Moving on to more specifically focusing on the general fund, we annually kind of like to slice our revenue into the component parts. I think what you would see if you were to compare this to last year is it's pretty stable with the slightest variation occurring with local levy has increased a couple percent as state basic ed has decreased a couple percent as a percentage of the whole. And again, that's largely to do with supplemental levies and just that shift of how our funding is coming to us as it relates to state versus local dollars and kind of the reverse effect of the McCleary decision is starting to creep into our pie chart here. Looking at our revenues in more specificity, I won't go through this line by line, but I think you would see we're pretty consistent year over year. What we saw on the last slide kind of shows in slightly more detail here. Our apportionment and local effort assistant have not necessarily kept up at the same rate as our local property taxes, so there's a very moderate shift between those two. All the other categories of expenses, or excuse me, all the other categories of revenue are largely stable year over year. This is just the second page of that slide. And again, our federal revenues are largely stable year over year, and that's been the case for multiple years. Moving on to the expenditure side of the equation, we typically slice it based on these activity codes that the state has set up. We group them into these, 4 basic categories. I believe when I looked at that compared to last year, no category shifted more than 0.3%. So again, I think great stability in how we're spending the money year over year as it relates to these categories. The next slide slices our expenditures by program. And again, the recurring theme here is and as we talked about last Tuesday, you might recall, as odd of a year as we're getting ready to enter from a budget perspective, The only actionable information we really have is to kind of create more of a business as usual. And then we'll have to just hang on and adapt as the variables come into focus a little bit more clearly. But as we built this budget, the best information we had was to, in essence, roll things forward and make the adjustments for just those deviations that we could accurately forecast. This slide basically is a statutory requirement. It started, I think it was 3, maybe 4 years ago. The legislature was concerned that districts were diverting their MSOC, and MSOC stands for material, supplies, and operating costs. So that's basically our non-salary and benefit expenditures. There was legislative interest on were the funding for these being diverted into salaries and benefits. And so they've required this be incorporated into our public hearing every year. In our case, there's no follow-up discussion because we are spending well above the funding level that the state provides for those dedicated MSOC expenditures. Second to last slide here is just a snapshot of our tax picture. You can see that we have a pretty positive picture in terms of if we go back a couple of years, our tax rate is pretty substantially lower. Much of that has to do with the McCleary decision and the capping of local taxes. Where we saw a slight increase between 2019 and 2020, you can see is primarily focused on our technology levy. Effective for 2020, we renewed it, and the previous technology levy, as you might recall, did not have any adjustments for inflation. So this was our catch-up for 6 years of inflation from the first technology levy that was approved again 6 years ago, or 6+ years ago. I still feel like we have a pretty compelling tax rate picture. Our bond rates are relatively low for the value that our taxpayers are seeing in terms of the construction going on around our community. And so I think there's a really positive story that we can all be proud of on this page. And then our last slide is starting, I think it was 2, maybe 3 years ago, it all blends together. There was the expectation and requirement that school districts not only build an annual budget, but they foresee the next 4 years in an official budget document. What I would tell you on this is it is very, very difficult right now to forecast our financial variables 4 days from now, let alone 4 years from now. So we gladly comply with the obligation. We do a good faith effort to crystal ball. But I would not want to wager a substantial amount of money that these are going to be the factors in 2022, 23, and certainly 2023, 24. However, again, given the actionable information that we have, we can reasonably forecast modest increases from the state on those things that they fund until we hear differently. And so you'll see that there's a slight increase in funding until we hear differently, and then we would assume that we would be then expending at a slightly higher rate as each year went along. We certainly can wonder, and we can certainly prepare for more pessimistic scenarios, but I don't think we felt it was appropriate to do a more doomsday scenario until we get a little further down the road with the state economy and what the full impact of COVID might be long-term to the district. So with that, concludes our summary of the document we'll be asking you to approve shortly. I'm happy to entertain any residual questions that might yet have been unanswered.
Okay, I don't hear any. Alrighty. Thank you very much, Brett. We do allow for audience comment. It's a public hearing. And my understanding is we didn't have anyone sign up in advance, Dr. Webb?
That's correct.
Okay. Are we set up to allow if somebody would like to speak at this point?
We're really not.
Okay. That's what I thought, but I want to make sure. Okay.
Yes.
All right, so since we didn't have anyone sign up for public or audience comment, we can go ahead and close the public hearing and reconvene the regular meeting. And this, again, our next item is to adopt Resolution 862, the 2020-2021 budget. Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve.
Thank you. And a second?
I'll second. This is Kyle.
Thank you, Kyle. All right, is there any discussion?
I just wanted to say thank you again. This has been a very challenging spring budget season where we have not been meeting regularly, haven't been meeting in person. I think we fired a lot of questions at Brett and team, and I just wanted to thank him again for all the effort in getting our answers done. And I know that it's such a volatile time and so many things are unknown at this point. So I appreciate the information that was shared last week and the questions that were answered.
All right, not hearing any other questions or discussion, we'll go ahead and move to the vote. Director Banfield?
Approve.
Director Barrows?
Approve.
Tried to skip you again. Sorry, Tracy. Director Decker?
Approve.
Director Sproul?
Approved.
And I will also approve it, so the motion passes. Let's see, do we have, oh my goodness, I've lost do we have a superintendent's report?
Superintendent's report.
All right, are there any additional board reports? All right, then before we adjourn, I just want to, I feel like I keep saying it, but I can't say it enough. I want to thank the staff for all of their work. The work that you've already done and the work that's you're still doing. I just can't even, I can't wrap my head around just how significant the challenge that we are trying to solve here is. It is certainly unprecedented in so many ways, and I cannot express my gratitude and appreciation enough for all of your work. So thanks to everyone, the superintendent and everyone down at district office that is working on all of this. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and adjourn this meeting, or we're moving to a closed session following this meeting. And I believe everybody has their information for that closed meeting. So we'll move directly into that closed meeting. I know there was that said that it started at 8. It is not starting at 8, it's 8 starting following this meeting. So we'll go ahead and end this meeting and move to our closed session. Thank you, everybody.
And Wendy and board
Yes.
directors, there's a separate link for that closed meeting.
Right.
Okay.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.